This is what's known as a poised pallet fork. In today's video, we're going to talk about why they were used, their advantages and disadvantages, and why it really matters. And stick around because I'm going to answer a viewer question. Years ago, watchmakers considered poising a pallet fork to be a real mechanical advantage as far as it related to regulation and having more consistent rates. This was primarily due to the fact that an unpoised pallet fork is heavier on the side of its arbor with the lever and horns than on the other side with the pallet stones. And this unequal weight distribution can cause slight positional errors when the watch is in a vertical position. Now, when the movement is vertical and the heavy side of the pallet fork is in a horizontal position, the unbalanced weight of the lever has to fight gravity more than when it's under the arbor. And this is because the balance wheel has to work harder to make the fork move up against gravity. The extra power will take away the available impulse or the power delivered to the balance wheel. So their idea was that if a counterweight was added to the other end of the pallet fork, it would kind of act like a balanced teeter-totter, canceling out that error. Not only that, they calculated that if they could reduce the angle of the locking face of the pallet stone by a couple degrees, that would also require less energy to unlock the escape wheel tooth. So for them, it was really a win-win change in design. I mean, it makes sense, right? Train wheels are the same around their axis of rotation, so they are essentially poised. The balance wheel is poised with timing screws to compensate for irregularities in the weight caused by the hairspring and the roller table around the arbor. So why not balance the pallet fork? Now, despite the fact that a poised pallet fork theoretically would benefit those vertical positions, poising pallet forks just didn't last very long. That extra bit on the pallet fork added considerable weight, and this extra mass significantly increased the inertia of the fork, meaning the balance wheel must use a lot more energy in all the positions simply just to unlock the escapement. Because of this overall loss of power, watchmakers generally considered the advantages of having a poised fork to not be worth the extra power that it required. So what did they change? Well, first they started to make the pallet forks lighter. And they also had to increase the angle of the pallet stones, which does create a bit more unlocking resistance when the watch is in a vertical position. But what they found was that the differing resistance on the entry and exit stones offset one another. So it was kind of a wash. And it made a lighter, unpoised pallet fork much superior in real applications. So you're probably asking yourself, why does this really matter? Well, in the course, we've been talking about draw. And draw is the force that holds the pallet lever against the banking to keep the watch safe as the wheel oscillates back and forth. Now, for all of you who sit at the front of the class, listen to this. Now, if you have a watch that looks good on the time grapher, but on the wrist the timing is erratic, this could be a problem with draw. If draw is weak, the lever will come off of the banking, causing the guard pin to rub on the roller. And this additional friction affects the amplitude, which of course affects the rate. Now, we test for draw when servicing a movement to make sure that the draw is strong enough to prevent this from happening. What's ironic is that even noobs do the test, but they're just doing it for the wrong reason, and they really don't know that they're doing it wrong. Now, normally you'll see people move the pallet fork back and forth a few times to check that power is getting through the train, and then they install the balance wheel. The reason this test is done is to verify that the draw is correct on both sides of the banking. To properly check for draw, you perform this test at the 24-hour mark, not at full wind. It's important that draw is strong enough when the mainspring power has run down, not when it's at its strongest. The other thing that matters is the position of the movement. If you have a movement with a poised balance, that you check in the horizontal position because it's not affected by gravity at all. But when you have an unpoised pallet fork, you do this test in the vertical position. Put the pallet fork so its heaviest part is horizontal. We do this because if the watch shows erratic timekeeping or it stops in specific vertical positions, testing the draw with the heaviest part of the fork lying horizontally will reveal if gravity is contributing to the unsafe or weak draw. So now that we have it all set up, all you do is pull the lever off the banking just a little bit, just enough so it doesn't unlock from the escape wheel, and you let go. What you're looking for is for the lever to instantly snap back to its banking. That's it. If the watch has low amplitude, it also could be suffering from too much draw. Excessive draw requires the balance wheel to use too much power to unlock the escapement, which obviously wastes energy that could be going towards the oscillation. Now, if you suspect that this is the case, you can perform a modified draw test by attaching a small piece of wax to the end of the fork to see if that extra weight is enough to overcome the strong pull of the draw. And of course, if you're moving a pallet stone to correct weak draw, you always want to re-verify that the draw is now safe. One of my viewers asked, "Alex, I'm just curious why the entire escape wheel is put in the epilam. Seems like the pivots and the pinion would powder up. Any thoughts?" Well, Stephen, that's a great question. Matter of fact, I had someone else ask me that same question less than a week ago. Now, you've probably heard me talking about why we only treat the pallet stones and not the whole pallet fork, which is really because that constant pounding of the impulse jewel can create a powder of the epilam, which contaminates the area of the slot in the impulse stone. Now, in the case of the escape wheel pivots, even though they're not being impacted like the pallet fork slot is with the impulse jewel, it seems like if you were to lubricate those pivots with oil, it would repel them because of the epilam, right? So think about this. When we're letting the movement run for that 15 minutes or so to allow the epilam to be rubbed off the escape wheel teeth in the pallet stone, do it in both horizontal positions and also in one vertical position. When running horizontally, the lower pivot shoulder is making contact with that jewel, which will rub off the epilam. And if you let it run for 10, 15 minutes, and then flip it over to the other side, do the other pivot shoulder. Then if you run it vertically, the side shear between the pivot and the jewel will rub off any epilam that's on the pivot. Obviously, you would want to do this with dry pivots. Now, in the next video, I'm going to go over how I diagnose a non-runner. And as always, thanks for watching, and because there's so much more to learn, I hope to see you in that video.